Hi, welcome to the Big Four. I'm joined by Winston Williams and Gayle Davies. We're going to be interviewing Gayle Davies today. She's doing lots of wonderful things and setting up a charity in Africa for people with bipolar. And she's a chiropractor and does many different things. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you've got to where you've got to.
Wow. Well, I maybe it's best if I sort of work backwards from where I am now.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm in Dubai, living with my mum at the age of 46, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I came out here because she wasn't feeling very well just as coronavirus started to take off around Europe. We don't know whether she actually had coronavirus, but she had some symptoms that were a bit worrying. And I ended up leaving my house, flat, job and everything in the UK, and within the space of 3 days moving to Dubai. And that was just over 3 months ago now. Yeah. So initially it was great. It was nice to spend some time with my mum. We did some cool stuff around helping her business get going and stay going during the crisis. So she's a chiropractor as well. And we had to apply for a telehealth license so that they could carry on operating during coronavirus. And then I started writing my memoirs, I suppose it would be. So I started writing a book about my life stories, and that was amazing. And I found it very therapeutic. I don't know if anybody's ever done it, but I came up with a bit of a concept around that and got other people to write their stories of my interaction with them as well. Mm-hmm. And just receiving their stories and exchanging my stories with them was such a powerful experience. And it was around then that I was starting to feel a little bit too happy. So I've learned to keep an eye on my own mood. And I, for the first time, actually identified it really early on that I was going into a high. So I got some psychiatric help. I got a psychologist on board, and I started to sort of go down the process of getting the right help where I needed it. So I continued to be quite elated. I was, full of energy, didn't want to sleep, felt like I had drunk 16 cups of coffee. I had that kind of buzz in my system. Mm-hmm. I was just productive and happy and all the things that you would hope to be. But I know that there's some warning signs for me that I can't ignore, that if I get too happy, then there could be difficult consequences. So I got to the point where I actually entered into a bit of a nervous breakdown. And it came about through challenges with my relationship with my mother while I was living here. So initially it was amazing and we were getting on brilliantly. And then it was a bit of a coincidence. We were watching Westworld. I don't know if either of you guys have seen it.
Yeah, I've come across it. Yeah.
Well, we were watching that every night after we were watching the coronavirus updates on the news. And so I was getting all stressed out and anxious about the news, and then watching Westworld about control. Mm-hmm. And, my mum is lovely, but she is quite overprotective of me. And that was coming across as her trying to control me. And it got to the point where I was beginning to retaliate with her, which I'm a very placid person. So normally that would not be my sort of modus operandi. So we got to the point where I had to isolate myself in my room for a whole week so that I didn't go crazy, I suppose is the word. I mean, I had to protect myself psychologically from my own mum. And I was doing this with all the help from the psychologists. And, my instinct was to flee. So get me out of here. And I made about 4 different escape plans of how I could get out of there. And the psychologist helped me to understand that the best thing to do was to sort of ride the waves of anxiety that I was feeling, and just to get through until we had a session of family therapy, which honestly was life-changing for me. And I'm disappointed in myself that we never did that before, because it was so amazing. So we did this family therapy session, and I wasn't on the session. So initially I wanted to be involved because it really pissed me off that I had not been involved in a lot of the family discussions about me. So they would get together and talk about me, but not include me.
Yeah.
But we decided between the psychologist and I that it would be easier for them to be able to speak their truth if I was not on the call. And so we got to the point where my mum, my dad, and my sister all dialed in from various different locations, and they had a psychoeducation session. It wasn't a psychoanalytical session. So it was about how to understand me, how to best handle me, how to interact with me in a way that's non-threatening. And as I said, it just changed my life, because immediately after the call, the messages that I was getting from my dad and my sister, and my ability to spend time with my mother, massively improved. Like overnight, different ball game.
Great.
So I kind of gradually came out of my protective bubble, to the point where I'm able to spend time with my mum now. We have a good laugh. We've repaired the relationship to an extent. You know, we've still got some challenges, so it's not like it's a miracle, and you know, we're never going to have any disagreements, but I've learned how to communicate with her in a much better way, and she's learning how to communicate with me in a much better way. I mean, I love my mum to bits, but she has very limited filters. So that's somehow why we get challenges between us. But I know that she comes from the right place. She loves me to bits, and I feel very grateful for the love that I have in my family, because I don't think I would have made it this far without that. Interestingly enough, when this was all going on and I was waiting for the family therapy and I was in my bubble, the family were all kind of like the them against the us, because they'd all tried so many different methods to help me over the years, and it wasn't getting the results that they were hoping for, so they were frustrated as well. And it became my friends who became that kind of, I call them my guardian angels. So I've got a WhatsApp group of girls who supported me throughout it, and they, you know, they range from people that I've known since I was 3 years old to people that I've known for just a few years, especially the girls that I met when I just recently went to university. They were all fantastic. The girls that I've known since I was at school, everybody was so supportive, and I really couldn't have got through it without the professional help, but also the kind of, you know, amateur help. But they were so amazing. I daren't call them amateur.
Yeah. That's good. So going back to the conversations with the family therapist, what kind of tools were they giving your family to help manage the types of things that you were going through, so that they wouldn't trigger certain reactions in you? Were there any specific tools that you can remember that they were given?
Well, I don't exactly know what happened on that call. I
Okay.
just know that things changed radically. So it was about learning that I am speaking a different language to them,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to try and learn my language a lot more if they want to interact with me and relate to me in a way that's not going to trigger me off.
Okay.
So whatever happened on that call, it was amazing.
Yeah.
If I
So
could bottle that and give that to other people, then I would.
that's good. That's good. Were they sort of using, say, less extreme terms with you, so it would calm? Was it that kind of stuff, or was it?
It was just a massive turnaround in not trying to not trying to control me,
Mhm.
not So, oh,
You okay? Yeah, we
I've
can hear
got
you.
another call in the background. I need to work out how to get rid of that. Sorry, I've got a loud person. Wait a minute. Sorry.
Sorry, it's okay.
Oh, phew.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you hear
I had
that,
a
or was that
No,
just
question.
no, we
me?
didn't hear anything. No, no,
No,
no.
no.
Okay,
Fine.
so it was something on
Yeah,
Reddit in the background.
Yeah.
So I can't remember where I was. Sorry.
You were talking about how people were communicating with you and how it could possibly trigger certain reactions, and they needed to speak your language a bit more.
Yeah.
And you were talking about that type of stuff, like how they, just the possible sentences that they were using to you, or just the fact that you felt controlled all the time. So it's more of a feeling that these communications were giving to you.
Yeah. So I learned a method of communication, which I believe is called the York method of communication, where it's, when you do this, I feel that, and I'd rather that you did this, otherwise this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned when my mum was going off in the wrong direction and, getting escalated about something about me, that if I took a bit of time to reflect and then spoke to her with that method of communication, we were able to move forward and, have a laugh about the thing that had been causing us the trouble in the first place. So I'm learning too, and it's a learning process for the whole family, I suppose.
Yeah.
I was wondering, Gail, how many years have you been diagnosed, or how many years have you noticed the behavior in yourself and how your family has reacted to it?
So I have been diagnosed for 20 and a half years, but I would say that I started having symptoms about 3 or 4 years before that. And I was misdiagnosed to start with, which is very, very common with bipolar.
Yep.
So I had a diagnosis after about 2 years of counselling. The counsellor said to me, "Do you think you might be depressed?" And that was a revelation for me. And I did think, in retrospect, why didn't he mention that before? But maybe I wasn't ready to hear it, so you never know. So he said that to me, and I immediately went to a GP and saw them about being depressed. They gave me Prozac. And so this would have been about 1998. I took the Prozac and wandered home past a secondhand bookshop and picked up a book called How to Be Your Own Best Friend. It was obviously calling to me. It was 20p, I think. And I took it home and I read it. And I read it again and I cried my eyes out for about 6 hours. And I just realized that was it. I had just not been looking after myself and had not been my own best friend. So I felt amazing after I read that book, and then started reading every single book that I could get my hands on that had anything to do with sort of self-help, which was a section that I'd always bypassed in the bookshop before. I stopped taking the Prozac immediately because I was like, "Oh, I'm fine now. I don't need this." And then went into what can only be described as a very spiritual high, in which I remember thinking at times, certainly one time I can remember, I was driving up to see my sister and I told her that I was coming to tell her something really important. And she was like, "Okay, come on then, what is it?" And I was like, "Oh, I'll tell you when I get there." And I was driving up the motorway at a very high speed, thinking to myself, well, there's nothing that can happen to me because basically I have discovered the key to inner peace and I'm kind of like Jesus, so I must be okay. I'll be fine. The speeding will be fine. And of course I got there. When I got there, she was like, "Come on then, what is it? What is it?" And I said to her, "Well, I've just come to tell you that I've found the key to inner peace."
Okay.
And she was like, "Oh, I thought you were going to tell me you were a lesbian." I was like, "Oh, if only."
Okay.
So yeah, that was an interesting time. So that actually is one of the signs of the different grades of bipolar, in the sense that if you think that you're the new messiah, then that brings you into a different category, I think.
Nice. Okay, so in terms of so your family have now learned how to deal with certain aspects of your condition. Now, tell me about how that's affected your relationships with people, boyfriends, and so forth, and how that's affected your life in that respect.
Yeah, it's definitely. Well, I'm 46 and as yet single. I have recently met a very nice man, and if that goes somewhere, then that will be amazing. I haven't actually met him in real life because it's lockdown, so we've connected online, and we've connected via Zoom, and I'm very hopeful that that could be something great. But over the years, I've had multiple relationships, and I think that not only the mental health issues that I've had, but kind of the family issues that lie behind that have definitely had an impact on my ability and will to have a lasting relationship.
Have your
do you have a
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, again.
No, go
I
ahead.
was saying, do you have anyone else in your family who has experienced something similar, who you've maybe been able to look up to or see from their experiences? Because often I know bipolar, it can be a hereditary.
Genetic thing, yeah. My mum believes that my grandfather on her side was bipolar. So she talks about some of the things that he used to do. He used to have all these amazing business ideas that he would, I don't know whether he actually invented it, but he certainly brought forth to the public the hula hoop in was it the 60s or the 70s? So he was an entrepreneur, but he would often sort of get involved with the wrong people and it would all go horribly wrong. And he also was an alcoholic, and that's commonly associated with mental health issues. There's, I believe, in sort of more distant family, I think there's some schizophrenia on one side of the family, but nobody in my immediate family has got, my sister, for example, she is quite even in her moods. She did experience anxiety for the first time with lockdown in Hong Kong, and she was it was interesting for her to experience that, because I've obviously had it a number of times. So that was, I think, her first experience. My mum, I don't know, I think she's amazing. She's got so much resilience, which is something that I have struggled with throughout my life. But I do wonder whether there's anything undiagnosed there. Obviously, if it comes from my grandfather, then maybe there's something in my mum's line. But I think it comes from a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah, that's interesting. So moving forward now, with all the things that you're doing at the moment, how have you managed to do so many different things as well as contending with all those things? It's actually quite remarkable in a way. So tell us your journey about how you've come across all these various different businesses and,
Yeah, so the recovery from the breakdown, basically, I have re-termed it a breakthrough. I feel like this has been a different experience than the 3 previous nervous breakdowns that I've had, because being a little bit high while I'm having the breakdown has given me a greater capacity to process everything that's been going on. So these projects have just kind of evolved and come into my sphere, and because one of my friends used to call me Miss Many Projects anyway, so I think that it actually suits me to be working on lots of different things at once, because I don't get bored, and I kind of sow the seeds in different places and then I just wait for things to grow. So I've got 5, maybe 6 projects on the go that are I've got 2 personal projects. One is just to get myself well. One is to find love and motherhood. So then the business projects, I am recruiting chiropractors for my mum's clinic. I'm selling my sister's colouring book, which is amazing. My mum and I are making masks for coronavirus. And I have also got a resort in the Philippines that I'm trying to sell. It's not mine, but I'm trying to be involved in the sale process. And then the one that I'm extremely passionate about is a sort of mental health foundation / NGO / charity. I'm not sure quite where it's going to end up at the moment. That I did think was going to be distantly in my future. So I had written my 10 to 15 year goals out as part of the business planning process, I think, for something. One of the projects that I'm working on required you to write out your long-term goals. And I put down start a charitable foundation. And then I put down Africa, bipolar, and diversity and inclusion, which are 3 things that I'm very passionate about. And about a week later, we were sitting around, my mum, her marketing director, and myself. We were talking about the chiropractic business. And we were talking about what we wanted our legacy to be. So not just thinking about now, but what did we want to see in the future? And the marketing director, Ayana, said that she wanted to start up an educational foundation for women to improve access to educational resources. And I said, I want to start up something that encompasses those 3 loves that I have. And the next morning, I thought to myself, I don't know why I'm waiting 10 to 15 years to do this. So I just started up an Instagram account and found a few articles and spoke to a few friends about what I thought I might do. I got a little bit of a steer along the way. My friend Kwaku said, be careful. Be careful that you don't try and come across as the white savior, which really got me thinking about, do I have the right to do this, or should I not do this because of that potential? But then I spoke to some other friends and they said, as long as your heart's in the right place and you have the best intentions and you do your research, then there's no reason why you shouldn't go forward and do this. You're clearly passionate about it. So I've carried on doing it. So I started up the Instagram, and then I was chatting to this guy, Emmanuel, that I met online, and we had a bit of back and forth on text, and then we had a half an hour Zoom call about the intentions of the foundation. And he went a little bit quiet for the rest of the day, which is absolutely fine. Come back to me at the end of the day, and he'd written me a website about bipolar Africa. And I was just blown away. It's just the kindest thing that anybody could do for me. And I think it's just such a good example of how to show you care about someone, actually.
Yeah, and I think also when your intentions are pure and you put that out into the universe, it does come back, and the right people do enter your life, and they do give you those helping hands to actually help you move forward with the things that you're trying to do. And it's a great experience. But let's go back into more of, like, how do you personally feel, as you put it, of the white savior role in this sort of charity within Africa? What are your biggest fears going into this, and how has the support network around you kept you sort of on task, moving forward?
So I'm very cautious about saying or doing the wrong thing. And I think that this applies to many of my friends who are wondering what the right thing to say is, if saying something is the right thing, if it's not saying something, is that saying something as well? I'm prepared to sort of take the risk, in the sense that, I've often been guilty of perfection paralysis, of not doing anything in the face of potentially not doing the right thing. And I don't think this is the time to give in to that paralysis. I think this is the time to feel the fear and do it anyway, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the friends that I've had guiding me, they believe that, I mean, initially when Emmanuel made the website, there was a huge picture of me on there, and I was like, whoa, take that off. And he was like, why? I said, well, you know, I don't really want to be front and center here. I want the cause to speak for itself. And I want people to not be confused by the message because of the messenger. But, you know, various chats that I've had since then, I also am very connected to the truth. So I don't want to lie about what I'm doing either. And I think as long as people understand that I'm coming from a good place, I have great intentions, and you know, I have great hopes and dreams for this foundation, and I want to connect with people on a grassroots level, to find a sense of community. And I don't necessarily have to be a figurehead. It's not really about that for me. It's about just creating that sense of community that I didn't have when I first found out that I had bipolar. You know, I've found that now, but I think it needs to be relevant to your community as well. So, you know, there's no harm in people joining what is primarily US-based bipolar support groups, but the resources available to you and the just the feelings from friends and family will be different. And, you know, one of the other things that my friend Kwaku said to me was, you know, try not to take on a whole continent at once. He said, you know, there's 54 countries in Africa, Gayle. Why don't you just start with one of them?
That's good. Yeah.
So
that's great. Yeah.
I also had a chat with my dad about this week, and he's worked with some of the major charitable foundations and organizations in the UK. And he had a great idea, which is, why don't you start with Bipolar UAE and use that as a kind of pilot? Because you're there, you know about the resources that are available there. You could actually, if it came to it, you could meet people in person, especially during coronavirus. It's not going to be very easy to travel to Africa. So Emmanuel and I are working on Bipolar UAE at the same time at the moment. You know, we've got to be considerate of the different cultural influences that are around here as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's turned into two charitable foundations.
Oh, well, why not? So what would you say is the state of the current sort of available help in those particular countries you're focusing in at the moment? What kind of access do they have, and what do you intend to sort of implement, or what would you love in an ideal world to be able to offer them?
Okay, so I did a bit of research about Africa, and honestly, I haven't done enough, so I wouldn't claim to be the expert, but there was definitely a lack of understanding, resources, community. You know, even I had to stop making an assumption that everybody had the same access to the internet that I have, for example. So just because I think it would be a great idea to be able to provide people with online counselling, well, you know, if there isn't a computer in your village, then that's going to be a bit challenging, isn't it? So I want to understand what's there on the ground already. And then if that's something that I can assist, then brilliant, because, you know, they will know best. If there's nothing there, then, you know, I have another friend who has great aspirations. His name's Amos, and he wants to be the president of Zimbabwe one day. But one of his dreams is to build a series of clinics across Africa. And I managed to sort of speak to him about what I was doing and to get mental health onto the agenda in his clinics. because he was thinking more physical health. And I said, well, I agree that that's a huge priority, but also don't neglect the mental health side of things. So that could be a way of improving access. Of course, it does feel like, you know, it's so little. Is it going to get lost like a drop in the ocean? So where I plan to start is in creating community. So Facebook groups and Instagram, and just raising a bit of awareness of importance of finding your, I don't know whether I can say this word without it being wrong, but finding your tribe, in the sense that, you know, people who have experienced something similar to you, or family or friends of people who've experienced something similar to you, that sense of unity that you get when you find that you're not the only one, and that it's not because you're rubbish or lazy or useless, it's because you have a mental health condition.
Precisely.
So that's the first step for me. The next step would be to signpost people towards the resources that are already available for them. So be that people in the country, be that you know, things that they can read online. So resources would be the next step. And then eventually I would like to be able to provide resources too. So connect people with therapists and counsellors, maybe not in their same country, or if there are any in the country, then fantastic. So that would be when I get to the ability to raise funds, rather than just who I am at the moment, little old me, trying to do this from a bedroom in Dubai.
Yeah, well, you're doing great work, and just having that ambition to be able to do those things is very commendable. And it from everything that you've said from the beginning, it just highlighted the importance of unity and having a team of people around you, and the fact that we all need to be together to move forward. And with what's going on in the media at the moment, it's not, you know, it's never more sort of prominent now than ever. So, you know, it's good to see that you're trying to bring people together so that they can actually find a way through their difficulties at the moment. So it's good.
It's also good spreading the word that to get more people to understand about these mental illnesses. You can see, like, you had the expression, the example with your family, where they've understood, they've gone through some kind of meeting where they've been explain what it is that you're dealing with. So I think it's great that you're trying to spread awareness and that people understand that there are these mental illnesses, and you know, for people who aren't suffering, just to understand what people with particular type of mental illness are going through. I think it's really important. I think fortunately there's a lot more people doing that these days.
I know, it's what I was saying to Gavin the other day, this is basically my coming out party, because whilst I've been open with my friends and family about having bipolar, I've never really told the world. And I think the more people who do tell their stories, the less stigma there will be around mental health illnesses. And I'm so pleased, you know, you may love them or hate them, but the royal family have been doing a great job of raising awareness of mental health recently, and I really commend them for that. And every time I've ended up talking to somebody about my own mental health, it's either raised a question within them about their own mental health, or they've begun to understand somebody else who they know in their lives who may have had some issues in the past. And, you know, over this past 5-6 weeks, I've had 3 friends who are having nervous breakdowns as well. And so I've been able to talk to them about what's been going on with them, and, you know, hopefully provide a bit of insight and guidance. And I'm happy to report that 2 out of the 3 are out of the woods.
That's great.
Still working on the last one.
Oh, that's great. You know, it's great having that support network, and you know, you only get that through talking and sort of just being honest and trying to basically help as much as possible. And it's great that you're able to do that.
So Gayle, tell us about Dubai, how the situation is there with mental illness.
Well, I've been in Dubai before when I've been having a nervous breakdown, and last time I was here, I had some therapy I believe it was CBT, and it wasn't particularly helpful. I have to say that I know that there's a lot of research supporting CBT, and maybe it works for some people, but I've had many attempts at CBT in my past, and because I've usually had it when I've been depressed, I haven't been able to use the tools of CBT to think my way out of it. Maybe if I'd had CBT this time while I'm high, I might have been able to get loads from it. I don't know. But this time, I don't even know what the approach that she took was. It was a therapist called Khania from, am I allowed to say where?
Yeah.
Yeah, from the Priory in Dubai. And I did say to her, you have succeeded where 20 years of therapy has failed. And she said to me, be cautious about thinking that it's all about me, because there's a lot of this that's about you being ready. But I would highly rate her. She was and is amazing. And also the psychiatrist that I had from the Priory has been brilliant as well. So they both just really, it was the right thing at the right time. And it wasn't enough for me at the time as well, because it's quite expensive, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I was looking around for sort of more reasonable resources. So I've also pulled in a psychologist from a company called Cadabams, which were initially advertising free counselling or therapy for people that were affected by coronavirus, but they had so many people applying that they had to start charging for it. But it's a very reasonable cost, and I speak to a lovely lady called Reena who's based in India, and she's been doing some fantastic work with me on my inner child, on self-esteem and resilience. So we've been doing lots of exercises there. So I look forward to my regular Thursday appointment with Reena. And then that also wasn't enough for me at the time. So this is when I ended up with about 10 professionals helping me at once. So I signed up to an online counselling service called BetterHelp. And I have a counsellor in America called Gerald, who he's a professor of counselling. I think it's in Texas, but I'm not 100% sure, but somewhere in the States. And I very much look forward to my sessions with him as well, because we are making progress in different areas like sleep and boundaries. And I've also done a lot of work on my own. So whether that's been through watching webinars, I've got a coach, a guy called Travis, who has been helping me with sort of my purpose, my motivation, my vision of where I want to be, and my mission on how I'm planning to get there. So let's just say I've thrown everything at it this time.
Okay.
That's really good.
So I was wondering, Gayle, if you met somebody now, if you met your younger self, or you met somebody in their 20s who just discovered they have this type of behavior, this diagnosis, so what would you recommend for them? It's like maybe, the top three things they could do.
Wow. So I would say the first thing I would recommend is find a community. So be that online or, a support group that they may have in a local area. I mean, I have to say, I did go to a support group many years ago when I lived in Bristol, and it frightened the life out of me. There were people who were in much worse situations than me. And my instinct to help kicked in a lot. And I found myself sort of visiting a number of people in hospital, and, there were people in quite desperate situations. And I found that it was a bit overwhelming for me. But, that could be a great help to some people. The online communities are brilliant. You've got to as with everything online, you've got to use your judgment about the people that you meet there, and have your, like with internet dating, I find that you have to have your heckles up a little bit, because you have to protect yourself as well. So yeah, find your community. And then the second would be become your own advocate. So learn everything that you can about your condition. The first book that I read, that I made my whole family read, was called An Unquiet Mind. And I believe the author is called Kay Redfield Jameson, something like that. So that was a revelation for me, because it was a first-hand account of somebody with bipolar. But also she was a psychologist or psychiatrist herself, so she had a lot of the scientific input as well. And just having my family read that was a great step forward for us, because prior to that, it was always, I felt like it was like, it's just her mental health, it's her bipolar, and that I wasn't seen as a person anymore, that I was seen as a diagnosis. So learning a lot about, in this most recent episode, I've looked at the new books that are available now, and there's so much more available. And I realized that, we all need to update ourselves on the current state of thinking around bipolar. I read something that approximately 20% of people with bipolar can actually learn to manage it themselves. And really, the fear that I have for myself is that this isn't the last time, that, I might still have another nervous breakdown, or I might still have another massive high or low. And where I feel that I am at the moment is that I've made a breakthrough, and that this could be the last time, because I feel like I'm learning tools now that could stand me in really good stead for the future. But in the reading, I'm hoping to find the magic key to not having future episodes. So what would be my third thing? I'm just thinking, what would be my third thing? I think it would be, I put out into the universe that I needed help, and help came in spades.
That's fantastic.
So don't be afraid to ask.
Exactly.
I've definitely met or discovered people who have actually been dealing with bipolar and reached the stage where they do have it under control. So there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know if you've heard of a guy called Dr. Patrick McKean.
No.
He's got a few lectures online. Actually, he's really gives some really good advice about how to handle bipolar.
Okay,
I'll send you the link later.
Thank you.
That's good. That's good. So in terms of you mentioned the tools to help you remain stable. What, for the people watching, or people that may feel like they've got this condition, what kind of tools would you recommend, or the things that you found that have really helped you get through when you feel like you're moving away from the center, sort of feeling sort of stable? What types of things would you say are just, just still you personally, or just generally, just like you say, okay, something that you say to yourself? Or
I did a piece of work which was 3 questions that my coach Travis asked me, and then after answering the 3 questions, he formulated a sentence, and it's basically, my purpose is to use my problem solving and creativity to showcase others and provide love, through kind and compassionate communication. So the exercise in finding your purpose was very simple. And since I've done it with him, I've done it with about 10 of my friends as well. And I can't tell you how appreciative they've been, because just knowing what you're out there to do and articulating that in a really clear way, and then saying it to yourself morning and evening, and connecting everything that you do during your day to your purpose, is just a massive leap forward for me. Because I always used to feel like I was you know, the dandelions,
Yeah, just
when you
floating
blow
on
them, and
yeah.
I was used to feel like I was drifting on the wind, and I've done good things in my life and then they haven't worked out, and I've had a problematic career history due to my mental health. And knowing that I have a purpose was amazing. And then linking to that purpose um, the vision that I have of a perfect world. So I couldn't spout that one quite so freely, but I can send it to you afterwards if you would like to see it. Then looking at the values that I have, underpinning that purpose, and then tying, the work that I'm doing with Travis is to tie the goals that I have on a sort of daily, weekly, monthly basis back to that purpose and back to those values. So he's definitely been guiding me in a great direction. And I don't know where the end point is yet. We've still got another 3 weeks to go with my coaching program with him. And I don't know what my future holds, but that's still quite an exciting thing. I mean, hopefully it holds all of the things that I'm doing at the moment and maybe more. Because I'm loving what I'm doing at the moment. I've never felt more passionate and fulfilled by various projects that are lighting my fire in different ways. So that's been a fantastic experience of going through coaching. What else? What other tools? So I've been listening to webinars from a guy called Dr. Nima. He's also a chiropractor. Travis is a chiropractor too. So there seem to be a lot of people in the chiropractic world that end up in coaching. So Dr. Nima is like a teacher of how to regulate your nervous system through becoming trigger proof, he calls it. So he has an online community called the Trigger Proof Community. He puts out a lot of Facebook Live content where he comes across, it just seems to come at exactly the right time when I'm just wondering what to do about something. Then he'll have done a broadcast about it. So he's done things about romance, about Black Lives Matter. He's done things about different kinds of relationships in your life. And, I have a goal in my 3 to 5 year goals, which is to go on his sort of, he calls it the overview experience, where you spend 90 days in a coaching program with him and his people. And I really think that just doing the work yourself and learning how to recognize and to elongate the period of time between stimulus and response. He talks about that a lot. He talks about secure attachments rather than codependency. There's so much good stuff that I've learned from him. He actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to do a little plug, but he has something coming up on the 21st, which is Father's Day, isn't it? Sunday, where he does a meditation. He does an introduction to it and then a long meditation about reconnecting with your inner child. So it's called breath work and badassery. So he's been an invaluable tool as well. And as I said, just the love of friends and just being open and honest about what's been going on with me. I mean, I have to admit that I've probably been open and honest with a few too many people, and there's probably a few people out there wondering, why is Gayle getting in touch? But I've had such amazing responses from various different people. One of my friends, I sort of persisted with him because I just knew that he would be the right person to talk to. And he's come up with a system in the future that if I ever really need to talk like now, then I just have to use the word courgette.
Okay, you got a safe word.
Yeah, we've got a safe word. So when I did finally get through to him, it was the kind of soul lifting conversation that I knew it would be. But now I've got my bat signal, so I know what to say when I need to really
Brilliant.
get through to him. So
Yeah, it just shows that, you know, when you take ownership of it, it just empowers you so much to be able to go out there and say, this is who I am, this is what I need, and people respond really nicely to it, it
yeah.
seems, you know. So it's great.
So I have got something a little bit off the wall planned, and you're both invited.
Oh, thank you.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about what
Yeah.
it is before you agree to come.
Okay.
It's going to be on the 25th of July, and it'll be
Mhm,
at 2 p.m. London time.
mhm.
And it's going to be a quadruple celebration. So it was going to be a triple celebration, but we've just added one today.
Okay.
So it's my birthday. I'll be 47.
Okay.
It's my birthday the week before that. I will have finished the coaching course with Travis, so it'll be like my graduation.
Mhm.
And the thing that just happened today is that it's my coming out party as being somebody who's bipolar
Yeah.
or has bipolar. And fourthly, I watched a TED talk, and I'll have to send you the link to the TED talk.
Yeah.
But it's called "The Person You Should Really Marry."
Okay.
And it turns out the person that you should really marry is yourself. So I'm having a self-wedding.
Incredible. How's that going to work out? You're going to do like Dennis Rodman and half yourself?
Well, I've decided to make it a sustainable wedding.
Yeah.
So the only thing that I plan to buy is a few flowers and probably some nice food and drink. It's going to be on Zoom or something like that.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to have a little celebration. It's been a challenging year for most people.
Mhm.
And I wanted to bring people together and celebrate the breakthrough, I suppose. Celebrate with the love of all my friends and family, getting through this time and sort of knowing who I am a lot better.
Mhm.
And hopefully that makes me more capable of serving and helping other people in the future.
Yeah.
That's great. So
Sounds
as a
amazing.
sorry?
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. So looking into the future, ideally, what would you have? What would be in your ideal world the things that are coming to pass over the next sort of 5-10 years? What things?
Okay, so if everything works as planned,
Mhm.
I will be a mother of 2 children. I've had a vision of becoming a mother for many, many years. And I know that at 47, that's going to be challenging, but I have done some groundwork on this, and I'm number 6 on the list for donor eggs in the UK. So that was me going down a path of solo motherhood originally. But, you know, if I've managed to find a daddy, then that would be great. So we'll see how that one pans out, but hopefully I shall be a mother of 2. Running my successful foundations. Maybe there's 1, maybe there's 2. With the love of my friends and family around me. I mean, that's all I really need and want.
That's great. That's great. So just as a last sort of thing, if you could tell us the names of your foundations, where to find you, just give us all of your details so that people can get in touch if they have, you know, feelings or have similar sort of condition, they can reach out and speak to you.
Okay, great. So the Foundation for Bipolar People in Africa is called Bipolar Africa. It's on Instagram as Bipolar Africa and on Facebook as well. Bipolar UAE, similarly, on Instagram and Facebook. And my Instagram is Gayle M. Davies. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me and find out about any of the other things that we're doing, then feel free.
Excellent. I'll put all the links in the description box below. Yeah,
Okay.
it's been great. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with before we go?
Oh, now that's putting me on the spot.
Lasting thought.
Lasting
Catchphrase,
thought. Well,
little
you know, when
catchphrase.
it comes to purpose, the first thing that came to my mind when Travis said, "What's your purpose?" The first word I blurted out was love. So I really believe that all you need is love.
What a great way to end. That's great. Okay, so thank you very much, Gayle Davies, for all the great
Really
things
nice
that you've
to meet you,
said.
Gail.
Lovely to meet you too.
It's been great. And
I'll see you on the 25th.
yes, we will. We will be wearing my best suit. And thank you as always, Winston. And this has been The Big Fault, and hope to catch you soon. Bye.